Hello everyone, welcome to In the Studio episode 112. So today I was feeling a little soundscapey. So I made one and I thought I would show you how I did it. So here it is. Okay, so I think you get the gist there. Now, this is something that I don't typically do. I really don't know why. I felt like experimenting with really ambient stuff. Sometimes I just like to do things that are a little bit out of the ordinary and just experiment and just have fun playing with different sounds. So that's what I was doing here today. But I thought that I would walk you through um, how I made this step by step and kind of explain my thought process and what each element is contributing to the overall sound. So let's dive right in and I'll just break this down piece by piece. So I started with this basic pad sound, which is playing a C minor 7th chord with another C note 1 octave up added. And I designed that in massive, so I might just go ahead and redesign that for you from scratch. I think it's a benefit to know how to design a basic pad sound anyways. So I'm just going to go to File and New Sound to initialize a fresh patch, excuse me. So I'm just going to use one oscillator for this, and I'm going to use a saw wave because I want a nice warm sound. So I'm just going to leave that on the saw just like it is. I'm going to run this through a filter. I use the Daft filter and just pull this cutoff down. Let's just play this. Around there. Maybe just give it a little bit of resonance. Okay. And then I want to introduce just a little bit of subtle modulation here. So I just use, oh, you know what? Before I do that, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Just need to adjust the amplitude envelope. So I'm going to turn this attack quite high and turn the release up quite high as well. So it just slowly fades in and it slowly fades away. And then I'm going to add some subtle modulation. So I use the chorus ensemble here. And I'm going to turn the rate down so it's just a little bit, so it's slower. I think turn the depth down so it's just so it's not so intense. And then just turn the dry wet down a little bit as well. Yeah. And then I wanted a touch more subtle, just kind of drifting. So I just modulated the pitch. So I'm just going to drop this here, this LFO 5. And I'm going to set this to 5 cents. Super subtle. You almost won't even be able to hear it. But I used a sine wave curve at a very slow rate to modulate that pitch. And then I think I used a little EQ here, so just on this low shelf, just pulled out a little bit of the low end. And that's pretty much it for a basic kind of warm pad sound. And that was the core of this soundscape. So next I wanted to add just another pad layer that had a little bit more going on, that was that would morph over time. So I added this layer, which is playing the exact same chord, and these chords are just stretched out for 32 bars, like you can see. So I picked a nice little pad preset from this plugin called Expand from Air, and it's the Stratos pad layer, which has just a nice kind of morphing sound to it. So you can hear those two together. And I just thought those gelled nicely together, and I just did a little bit of tweaking to the preset, just pulled off some of the top end frequencies here. And then, I mean, if this was something that I would, if I wanted to ever use in a track, I might even like automate the cutoff a little bit throughout this soundscape to introduce a little bit more movement. So moving on to the next element, which is another pad layer, but this one's only playing two voices of that same chord, the C minor 7th chord, and it's playing an octave up, so it's playing just the G and the C, one octave above these chords. And this pad is just a pad from Absinthe, and all of the low frequencies are scooped out. So it's just playing this kind of shimmery top part here around 2K. And what I also did here to give it a even more shimmery effect was I sent it off to this Reverb send, which has the Valhalla concert hall, and followed that with the sound shifter. So I'm pitching that reverb up by 1 octave, and that really gives it a shimmery, shining effect. And then just another EQ to follow around 2K to, all I want is the very, very top end of the reverb. So I just add a little EQ there. But you can hear that it's extremely subtle, but I'll play it without that reverb send. And then without. Just adds like a little sparkle on top. So moving on. The next thing I wanted to add was some sort of organic element, and there's nothing better than a human voice for that. So that is what I did. So I'm just going to make these smaller. So I just picked out 3 kind of sweeping vocal effects, and they're actually playing the C minor chord. So I have the C note, the D sharp, and the G right here on these voxes. Just kind of sweep in and then sweep back out, so you can hear those with the pads. Yeah, and that just adds that organic element to this soundscape. Now, if you don't have like a sweep like this, you can easily make one by taking a small snippet of a vocal and maybe running it through a reverb at an extremely long decay setting, and then you could manipulate that, and so you have this long stretched out vocal, and then you could automate it in via filter or volume automation to come in and come out. So that's another option, another way to do it, but I thought that really added to the overall sound. So the next thing I added was this string part, which is quite important. So you can hear the strings coming in here. So the strings is just a sustain preset from the Contact library, the Session Strings Pro, and it's just playing a different chord arrangement in the C minor scale, as you can see here, which just gives it that extra layer of complexity and really starts to bring things to life. Going back to the vocals, though, I actually did do a little touch of processing, not much at all, but I just scooped out the very low end to make room for those core initial pads that I started with. And then I also just added a little delay on all of the vocals as a whole. So I sent all three of them to this group and then added these two plugins. And the delay is just a ping pong delay on an 8th dotted setting with a quite long feedback, just to give it that little extra bit of, spatial effect. So yeah, and then the strings, pretty self-explanatory, very simple, but it really adds to the overall vibe. The next thing I added was these two little short hits. I just wanted something that wasn't playing at like a sustained, throughout the whole soundscape. I just wanted a little hit to come in every once in a while, so I found this little chord stab here. And then this like tonal effect, which just pop in occasionally, but really, I think, added to the overall vibe. And those are just samples that I found in my sample library that worked well. And on this stab here, I did do a little bit of work, just some EQing there, just to cut away the unnecessary frequencies, a little delay. Yeah, it looks like it's an 8th dotted as well. And some auto panning, a slow auto pan, just to give it a little bit of movement in space through it, each side of the speakers. And then this little guy here, pretty much the same thing, just EQ'd it, added a little delay, 8th delay. So yeah, now the last thing I added was this Arpeggio, which is a piano, and you can hear it coming in here. Oops. And that piano arp just really helps build the energy a little bit. It doesn't ever get too intense. It just kind of peeks its head in, see what everyone's doing, and then just slowly fades away. And that was very simple as well. I just used another Contact instrument. I used the Giant, I believe it was. Yeah, the Giant piano, and I used, under this wrench tab, the arpeggiator right here. And yeah, just made an arp that way, and it's playing the C minor chord that I'm working with, and I also added in this D note as well, which is in the scale of C minor, but not part of the C minor chord. So yeah, and then I just did a little volume automation to bring that in, bring it out, and just help build that energy. And yeah, I just think these elements they work nice together. And this is something that I could expand upon and add more elements and really go crazy with it. But for the sake of the video, I think that it works very nicely. And then what I did to finish everything off was all of these elements are going to this track here called pad bus, and I just added a little touch of compression to glue all those elements together. About. So there you go. That's how I've approached making a soundscape. Hopefully it was useful for you in some way. So this is something that could be like a major part of a chill out track. This could be something that you could just use like as a complex atmospheric bed tucked down really low. Maybe it could be something that you can just use in a breakdown. I don't know. Um, yeah, like I said, this is something that I don't typically do, but I think it's fun to experiment sometimes with different sounds, different techniques, just try out things and see what happens. So, yeah, that's it for today. Um, leave me a comment, leave me a question, and I'll catch you soon. Take care.